You're listening to Overwatch Contenders Daily, your path to daily news, scores, and insights into the Overwatch League stars of tomorrow. Here's your host, LemonKiwi.
Overwatch fans, happy Monday. Welcome to Overwatch Contenders Daily. I'm your host, LemonKiwi. Today's episode is all about the Incheon World Cup qualifiers that happened this past weekend. I brought on very special guest Scott Tester, or you know him as the BearHands. He's Team USA's general manager and also former NYXL player personnel manager. So I brought him on to talk about, well, the standout performances of certain players, certain teams. Although we're not very surprised about the final results of Team South Korea and Finland moving on, we're going to be talking about the most entertaining and closest matches there was of Team South Korea versus Finland and Finland versus Russia. And also some off-topic things such as what Scott thought of Jake's casting for his first event and how Scott will be preparing Team USA for the LA group stage coming up at this next World Cup stop. So let's just get right into my interview now with Scott from Team USA. And I'm joined here with Scott Tester. You know him as the BearHands, general manager of Team USA, and also former NYXL director of player personnel. So Scott, leave it at that. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I was having a lot of fun watching the Korean qualifiers for World Cup and just trying to get ready for the next group stage, which is Team USA.
Oh yeah, there's so much going on, and I honestly could not stay up long enough to watch all of the qualifier stuff going on. But for the final results, it looks like it's what everyone thought. South Korea and Finland will be moving on to the final Blizzcon stage where, you know, Russia, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong not getting that opportunity. But Scott, just based on these results, you know, it hasn't really surprised us, but there was some good competition there, to be honest. Were there any players or teams that stood out to you in the qualifier?
Yeah, I thought Shadowburn played really well. It was super good to see him back in top form after not getting a lot of playtime during Season 1 of Overwatch League. I thought he looked great throughout the whole event and kind of carried Team Russia. I also thought Tayo and Depp from Team Japan looked really good. Depp was going toe-to-toe with some of the top Widow players in the world in this tournament, and historically Japan has not been a country that has produced a lot of top Overwatch talent, so it was sort of cool to see some top level play from those players, and I thought Depp specifically made a really good case for himself.
Japan was sort of one on the big list because they are doing decently well in Pacific. I think they're in the grand finals of the Contenders Pacific region, and that's sort of a big showing because even in Pacific and in all regions, it's sort of the Koreans always coming up on top. So a full Japan team actually did well in Pacific Contenders, and now the whole team of Cyclops Athlete Gaming, or CAG, coming to World Cup kind of gives them that advantage, you know, when you go in with your full team and you don't have to worry about scrimming with new players, right?
Yeah, it's something that we've seen from a few other teams in the past. Flash Wolves represented Chinese. Was it Chinese Taipei? Flash Wolves were a World Cup team in last year's Overwatch World Cup, and they came in as a full team. And you kind of see a similar thing even from Team Finland. Like, they're not obviously a contenders team anymore because several of those players are in Overwatch League, but that core of players have played together for a really long time in Overwatch.
And I mean, NYXL, yes, they're talented, but like it's basically NYXL as the South Korean team and other rosters. I mean, you have Russia that have a good portion of the win streak team from Contenders Europe, who also I think did well on that part. Were there any other standout sort of players that you noticed?
Yeah, I think Zappis is another guy that you can bring up. He looked really good. And again, it's somebody that didn't get a lot of playtime during the first season of Overwatch League, but he hit some diva bombs that, you know, changed the course of the maps. And some of those just were the result of really good team coordination, and some of it was just Zappis just being a great diva player.
I just loved Fragi and Zappis together. Like, when they went up against South Korea, it's just the tank play was so good from either team, and you wouldn't be able to tell that they're from totally two different teams. But speaking of players, it was sort of strange not to see Sabiobi play for South Korea.
Yeah, I thought it was strange because it was mentioned, I think, by Pavane at some point during the weekend that their plan was to play him, at least not on the first day, but he was going to play at some point over the weekend, and that just never happened. So, I mean, it's hard to say if it was just them sort of holding back strategies or playing the lineups that they thought were most conducive to the teams that they were playing against. But, I don't think it impacted their decision to stay with Libero and Carpe. And obviously they've got SBB as sort of an ace in their sleeve at this point.
Like we thought maybe they would bring him out against the harder competition, like maybe Finland or Russia or something, but no, we didn't see him at all. So, and he was obviously present, like there's videos of him getting attacked by the Korean fangirls at the event, so he's alive and well somewhere. So we'll have to ask Pavane what's going on with that. But one of the best matches, had I mentioned, in the entire qualifier was South Korea and Finland, going to a Game 5, going to the final point of Nepal. So what did you think of that match?
I thought that was one of the best matches in the history of Overwatch. Watching it right after the Korea Contenders Finals, which, again, was another of the best matches in the history of Overwatch when Runaway beat Kongdu Panthera. Having those in sort of such close succession to each other was just really wonderful for Overwatch. I think it's great to see that kind of competition during the off season of Overwatch League, and all the way down to that last fight on Nepal on the tiebreaker, Finland was right there in it the whole time, and it could have gone either way. It was an edge of your seat match for sure.
There was so much going on of different strategies and different people popping off at different moments to allow that team to sort of win. If it wasn't was it Fragi? Yeah, tank play on Rialto going insane. You got Libero on the Tracer and the Fair on the last map of Nepal. What did you think of Fate on Hammond? I think it was on Lijiang, a bit of Nepal too.
Yeah, I think there were times where Hammond worked out really well for them, and there were times where it kind of seemed like a detriment. And my assumption is just that at this early stage, they were kind of trying some things out and maybe not exactly scrimming, but trying to see how those strategies would work in a real-life environment. And, I would imagine that we'll see some of that as we move on to BlizzCon and see them in the finals of the tournament. But, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't play a lot of Hammond either. I think it could kind of go either way.
Yeah, I wonder how much practice and how much scrim time they've had, bringing in these new heroes, because I believe this was played on 1.26. I could be wrong, but Contenders is just throwing in a lot of Hammond right now in every region. Were you surprised that there wasn't as much Sombra in this particular match? I think we saw Taimu bring it out a little bit on Rialto, but really no Sombra play.
Yeah, I don't know. It's another one of those things that's kind of team preference. If you have a composition of players on your team that are able to play Sombra at a high level, I think she can be super impactful. But if you don't have someone on your team that's super comfortable in that role, then I think you're probably better off just sticking to the strengths of your team. And watching Taimu play Sombra specifically, I think he got a lot of value out of it. But I just sort of wonder if there's another comp they could have run that maybe would have challenged South Korea a little more.
And speaking of challenge, Finland was bringing out all kinds of punches. They brought out the quad tank on Nepal. What did you think of that? We haven't really seen a quad tank. It's been a lot of 3-3 recently.
Yeah, recently. But if you look way back to sort of the roots of Finland, the ninjas in pajamas and Giganti days, that's a strategy that they were really known for and really ran at a super high level. So I wasn't super shocked to see them running a quad tank, especially given the current state of the meta. I just think it's, again, something that fit their team, and I think those are the sort of comps that teams tend to have the most success with when they aren't just nailed down to the meta and they're playing something that fits the strengths of their roster.
I guess I haven't seen quad tanks since maybe last season of Contenders, and it's been so much goats, and
yeah, it's definitely
now bringing out the quad tank. I was like, whoa.
It's definitely been a while. It definitely seemed like a throwback to the old ninjas in pajamas for me.
Totally. What did you think of the whole Taimu versus Carpe on the sniper? I mean, if you look at Overwatch League, our Carpe is obviously one of the best players, but did you think Taimu was able to keep up against that matchup?
Sure. I thought that if it would have been a one-on-one Widow battle, I think it would have been a great match, but you have the rest of the other 10 players that are involved in that match sort of having their influence on it too. So it doesn't really come down to 1v1 sniper the way a lot of people like to talk about. That having been said, I think Taimu looked really good, and he's Mr. Good Aim for a reason, right?
There's a bunch of players, like I wouldn't say underrated sort of Overwatch League players that got to showcase themselves at this World Cup. And this particular qualifier, like, Zappis, and we talked about Fragi, we talked about Taimu, where you wouldn't rank them in the very top 5 of Overwatch League players, but they certainly showed that what they were made of, and maybe amongst other talent.
Yeah, for me, that person, hands down, at this event was Shadowburn. Like, he looked top-notch completely. And like, it really makes me wonder why he didn't get more playing time during Overwatch League Season 1, and I hope that is somehow rectified for Season 2. Whether he stays with the team with Philadelphia or not, like, I would just really like to see more Shadowburn.
Need more Shadowburn. I think the fans want it. Maybe he's working on flexibility of trying to adapt to this meta right now, but I mean, another good match. Oh, sorry.
I think one thing about Shadowburn, like, that you bring up, like, maybe he's working on deepening his hero pool or something like that. I think his hero pool is actually a lot deeper than people tend to give him credit for. Like, he used to play a lot of D.Va back on FaZe Clan, and I thought he was a fantastic D.Va player. And nobody talks about that. They just think he's like a Genji Pharah sort of one trick, but I don't think that's the case with Shadowburn at all.
He's kind of like a Seagull. You know how Seagull, everyone thought he was a Genji one trick, and then he was really able to show off those off tank and other hero pools within the Dallas Fuel. So the next match we should talk about is Finland versus Russia, where Finland took the 4th map, winning 2-1 after a tie on hybrid. So did you think Russia could have pulled it out here? I mean, they got 3rd place, but it was getting kind of close.
Sure, they definitely could have pulled it out. It was a really close match. I think it was Taimu that said in an interview that after the loss to South Korea, the team was just really emotionally and drained mentally. And I think that was probably a factor in their performance against Russia. Based on their results sort of against the rest of the field, it seemed like Finland was the stronger overall team. And really, I just think there were a lot of times where Shadowburn kind of put Mother Russia on his back and just kind of carried him to victory. And if that hadn't been the case, I think, maybe some of the other teams would have had a shot at qualifying, to be honest.
And another player we hadn't really mentioned, you said Shadowburn, but Mistakes with him looked so good. And even he was so confident, even teabagging people at the World Cup. That was entertaining.
Yeah, Mistakes is a great player. I think that's kind of a known quantity at this point. So everybody expects a high level of play from him. He's a guy that does get a lot of play time during Overwatch League. So for me, it was, he just kind of was
already good.
Right, exactly. He was just kind of par for the course. Whereas Shadowburn, I felt like shouldn't have surprised people, but probably did.
They worked really well together, and it was a pretty good matchup. But what did you think of the tanks? Because you got sort of Overwatch League tanks, Fragi on Philly and Zappis on Mayhem. But then you got Tonic, who is, I guess, not even on a team right now. Used to be on Bazooka Puppies, and Taxo, oh my god, I don't know how to say his name.
I think it's Zhao.
Currently on Windstrike. Zhao.
Yeah.
Thank you. But on EU Contenders. So did you think there was a difference in experience levels in the tank lines?
I don't know if it was necessarily experience levels, because Tonic at least is a guy that's been around the Overwatch competitive scene, sort of tier 2, tier 3 for a long time, since the beginnings, I think. So I don't know if experience is really the right phrase. Maybe experience at a high level, maybe just experience playing on a LAN environment in a stage in front of a huge audience. Those things may have played a role. I don't know. And obviously Fragi has adapted to that over the course of Season 1 of Overwatch League. And, I think he's a very strong main tank. And I think that's a big part of the reason Finland was able to do as well as they did. I really just think the tank play on Finland is quite a bit higher.
It was just nice to see that, teams mostly composed of contenders players were able, such as Russia, able to keep up with mostly Overwatch League teams or players on a team like Finland. So that was a pretty good matchup. It's kind of sad to see Russia. I mean, these weren't, like I said, surprising results of South Korea and Finland making it. It would have been nice to see Russia make it just a little bit closer, but we should go to the question kind of on everyone's minds is, now that South Korea is going to BlizzCon, do you think they're going to win the whole thing, or who will give them the most trouble?
I mean, I think they have to be considered the favorites to win by any reasonable standard. That having been said, I think this is the tournament where they are the most vulnerable. I think this meta is the least conducive to South Korea, and I think their roster is a great roster, don't get me wrong, but I think it allows for maybe somebody to sneak in there, and I think that there are some teams that are going to give them a legitimate run for their money at BlizzCon.
All right, so what team is going to give them the most trouble? No bias.
I mean, I gotta say Team USA, and it's not just because I'm part of Team USA. I legitimately think we have a super talented roster, and I think the meta is conducive to the roster that Arrow and I have put together.
I'm so excited to see Team USA. I had interviewed Zachary and how this will be him integrating with all these Overwatch League players and how young he is and however he's going to get substituted in. But really cheering for Team USA. I'm kind of biased towards Canada, who's also another top team that might give you guys some trouble too. But we'll get to the LA question in a second. But speaking of sort of new talent being introduced into the World Cup at this qualifier, Jake from the Houston Outlaws was seen having his first casting appearance at this qualifier alongside ZP. So what did you think of Jake's casting?
I was actually really impressed with Jake's casting, and I've talked to ZP about this a little bit. I think he did a great job. I think him and ZP work really well together. And one thing that I mentioned to him was that Nate used to call Jake the Tom Brady of Overwatch. Not necessarily because he's
That's a bad thing, isn't it?
I don't think that he meant that he was the greatest Overwatch player ever. I think it was more about his mentality and his sort of presence on camera and those sorts of things, and how he can be sort of an ambassador for Overwatch. And I was talking to ZP, and I told him that I thought the analogy was a little bit wrong. I think Jake is the Scott Hamilton of Overwatch. Scott Hamilton obviously is an Olympic figure skater who became a commentator afterwards, and he won a gold medal in the Olympics and everything. But I think Scott Hamilton is mostly known for being an Olympic commentator at this point, and I could see the same thing happening to Jake in the course of 3 or 4 years. I don't know what his plans are, if he wants to play more Overwatch or if he just wants to focus on casting, but I think he has a lot of talent as a caster, and I would like to see him pursue that.
It'd be nice to see him pursue it. I don't know how he'd be able to balance Overwatch League and I guess maybe a World Cup appearance every year would be nice, but I don't think he'd be able to do both. And I don't see him retiring. He looks really young and he's at the top at the peak of his talent. So I think it would be nice to see a rotation of Overwatch League players every now and then. I would have liked to seen it more on a desk role, maybe more analyst, but surprisingly as a caster he was able to keep up, and we got to also give credit to ZP, who sort of enabled him to his max potential.
Yeah, and I know they've been working together a lot off camera to sort of prepare, but I thought Jake just brought a lot of insight that would be difficult to get from somebody that hasn't played in Overwatch League and just sort of hasn't competed at the level that Jake has.
And it's surprising he was able to give that much insight because, remember, he's a player and you see your own point of view, you see your team stuff, but to go in a global mode like that and see all 12 players on your screen and still be able to digest the content and digest what's going on, because casters, it is still a difficult job to see 12 people kind of come at each other and figure out what's going on, and he was able to do a really good job of that. I think. But our next World Cup stop. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say I think ZP did a great job of setting him up to sort of provide that analysis in a relevant manner.
They worked really well together. I'm really surprised, and hopefully we'll see him again soon. But hopefully, I prefer him on the player side because of how talented he is there. But in the future, we'll see. But our next World Cup stop, though, is in LA, and you're one busy man getting Team USA ready for that one. So teams you're competing against include Austria, Brazil, Canada, Norway, and Switzerland. So what do you think of your competition in this qualifier?
I think there's some talented teams, specifically Canada and Brazil are both going to be pretty good matches for Team USA. Honestly, I don't think we're going to have a lot of trouble qualifying for BlizzCon, but especially Canada, I think, is a match that everybody's looking forward to.
Oh, yes. And also that Canada just, Australia's not in this one, but they just had a show match against Team Australia, which was actually really entertaining. And this, I think, will be the next match everyone's looking forward to. Are you worried about maybe Brazil Gaming House? Because they're like a pretty dominant team over in the South American region.
Yeah, they have always been a dominant team in the South American region. There have been a few times where they have played opponents sort of outside of that region, and I know their roster isn't exactly even what it was at that point. And Brazil's roster, I don't think, is even 1-to-1 BGH. But the times that they have sort of ventured outside of the South American region, they have not produced the best results. I still think they're a talented team, and they could, on any given day, give anybody a run for their money. But I would be pretty surprised if the two teams that qualify from LA are not USA and Canada.
And then the other teams, mostly consisting of Contenders players, Austria having a few diving under the influence, and we have Org from EU, and then Norway has a mix of EU and NA talent there, and Switzerland, I don't recognize a lot of these teams, or at least players that were in it, but World Cup is always an exciting time to see, can Contenders players really play at the same level as Overwatch League players? And a lot of people think Contenders players are at a whole different other scale of Overwatch League players, but as we've seen in this qualifier, they actually can be pretty close.
I think it actually varies a lot from region to region. Like, if you look at NA Contenders and Korean Contenders, I think there's a lot of players in those regions that probably would be playing in Overwatch League if they were born a year or two earlier. I think Zachary is an excellent example of that. If he were eligible for Overwatch League, he would absolutely be playing. So, I think there is talent out there. And in terms of the Los Angeles stop, like, one of the things that I'm most excited about is the North American Contenders Finals. I think is a really great move by Blizzard to sort of put those events in the regional World Cup qualifiers.
Oh, yes, Contenders Finals. I'm so excited. Poor Zachary has to play, like, World Cup and the Finals. So poor stress on that guy is going to be insane.
I mean, Tayo did that for Team Japan and for Cyclops.
Oh, right.
So it's, it's not unprecedented. I think it does put a little bit more stress on him. But, I think we'll be able to manage that.
Well, guys, make sure you check out on September 7th to 9th is the LA stop, where myself and BearHands or Scott will be, I think you're going to be present, right?
Yeah, I'll be there.
You're going, okay. Some staff sometimes don't go and they watch from home. I don't know if it's a bad juju thing, but we're both going to be... Oh, well, that helps when you live there, doesn't it? I have about a 6-hour drive, but I'm still going to be there in person to watch not only the Contenders NA Finals, but the LA World Cup qualifier spot. So make sure you check out Team USA, Team Canada, everybody you're cheering on for there. This was Scott. Thank you so much for coming on for this interview.
Sure, thanks a lot.
All right, this was Overwatch Contenders Daily. We're going to see you guys on Wednesday.